Shvaya.
ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so we are on the 14th Karika of the third chapter, Mandukya Karikas. So please unmute yourself and we'll chant Jivatmano Pratakvam.
Jivatmano
Pratakvam.
No, we'll do that again. Jivatmano Pratakvam Yat.
Jivatmano
Mano Pratakvam Yat
Bhagavutpatte Prakirtitam
Prabhupada Patitam
Avashyad Vrittaya Gaunam Tad
Avashya
Pratya
Pratita Kaunan Tattva
Mukhyatvam Hina Yujyate
Pratyatvam Hina
Tattva Jagrute.
Okay, so we are continuing with the topic of the last Karikas. Now, why does Shastra talk about differences in Jivatma and Paramatma? So this is the topic which is being continued. So he says Jivatmano Prataktvam. So that here it break carefully. Jivatmano has to be broken into Jiva Atma and Paramatma. So Jivatma Paramatma Prataktvam. The difference between Jivatma and Paramatma, which Shastra talks about, Yat Prag Utpattehe Prakirtitam. Before the teaching of Advaitam, so Shankaracharya defines Pragutpatte as Upanishad Vakyebhi Purvam, before the Jnana Kanda is taught. So the difference between Jivatma and Paramatma is given in the Shastram before Jnana Kanda is taught, which is given in the Karma Kanda part, Tat Gaunam. That difference is only figurative. And it is so that one can study properly. As a beginner, one can come into it. But he says Bhavishyat Vrittaya, from the point of the later teaching, Bhavishyat, the future teaching. So Bhavishyat here means future. Vrittaya literally meaning thoughts can be taken as teaching. So from the viewpoint of the later teaching, that is to say, from the viewpoint of Advaitam, of Jnana Kanda, that Dvaitam which is talked about in the Karma Kanda is provisional only. It has only temporary validity. And therefore he says, once you reach Jnana Kanda, the validity of the difference disappears. The difference is no longer there. And therefore, Mukhyatvam hi na yujyate. It is not correct to attribute Mukhyatvam, primary importance, to that teaching which has come in the Karma Kanda. What teaching? The perceived Jivatma, Paramatma differences which are talked about in Karma Kanda. He says it is not correct to take that as the primary teaching. It is only secondary teaching. The primary teaching comes in Jnana Kanda, which says Jivatma and Paramatma are the same. And therefore, this Dvaitam, wherever you are talking about differences, Paramatma, Jivatma difference, we are talking about Dvaitam. That Dvaitam you have to use as a stepping stone to practice Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, Puja, Nitya Naimitya Karma, all these things. Why? To have Chitta Shuddhi. And to get Chitta Shuddhi, we need to temporarily accept Dvaitam. After Chitta Shuddhi, one comes to Advaitam alone. Advaitam alone is the primary teaching. Okay. Then, well, Karika number 15. Mrilloha Vispulingadaihi Mrilloha Vispulingadaihi Srishtirya Choditan Yatha Upaya Sovataraya Nasti Bheda Kathanchana The words appear difficult, but they are not. You just have to break them up properly. So you take the second part of the first line, Srishtirya Choditan Yatha. So when you break it up, Srishtihi plus Ya plus Choditaha plus Anyatha. So Ya Srishtihi, that creation, Anyatha Choditaha. Chodita means talked about. And therefore, Ya Srishtihi Anyata Choditaha, that creation has been taught in many ways in the scriptures. And then the first part of the first line that talks about the various examples. So that it breaks up into Mrid, Loha, Visfulingaha, Adi. The Mriloha, when it is Mriloha, when you break the Sandhi, it becomes Mrit, Loha, Visfulingaha, Adi. So what is Mrit?
Clay.
Clay. So what is the example you're talking about?
Pots.
Pot and clay. Right?
Pot and-
Then Loha. Loha is what?
Metal.
It is metal. So we're talking about gold. And gold example also we know. Gold and bangle. Right? Then Visfulingaha is what? Sparks. And in which Upanishad did we study about the sparks? Mundaka. What did it say? That from one fire, multiple sparks are born. Okay. So he's just giving examples. There are many, many more prakriyas, many more examples, but he is backing up the statement that in the Shruti, creation has been taught in many ways through examples of clay and pot, examples of gold and ornament, examples of fire and sparks, etc. Then you go to second line. Sa upaya avataraya. Avataraya means to be able to grasp properly. Sa upaya. These are all techniques for proper understanding, for proper grasping of what? Of Advaitam. And then if you remember the teaching, especially the advanced students who have done Taittiriya and all, and Taittirias and Mundaka, you will remember that the description of creation, the description of Srishti has not been consistent in the various Upanishads, right? For example, Taittiriya talks about Srishti from what point of view? No?
Sheets.
Five sheets. Panchabhuta. Okay. Now, for example, Mundaka talks about which part of Srishti coming first? Do you remember? Etasmad jayate. You don't remember.
Brahma.
Etasmad jayate pranaha. From that Brahman is born prana. So in Mundaka Upanishad, they say prana is born first, and then the sense organs, and then the five panchabhutas. That is the sequence given. But in Tattvabodha, it is completely reversed, right? And in Chandogya, there are three panchabhutas only. I mean, three bhutas only, not panchabhutas. Only three bhutas. Only three elements are there. Five elements are not there. Therefore, you will find that there is a lot of inconsistency in the way that creation is revealed. In some places, for example, in some of the Upanishads, you will find that creation is presented as a simultaneous occurrence, event. Everything is created at the same time. In some places, there is sequential creation, right? And therefore, there is a lot of inconsistency in the teaching as far as Srishti is concerned. As far as the main teaching of Brahman is concerned, all the scriptures have a consistency. But as far as the Anatma teaching is concerned, there is inconsistency. Why is that so? Because it is not the Tatparyam, it is not the essential teaching of the Upanishads. Creation is adhyasa, it's superimposition. It has to be eliminated later. Apavada has to be done. And therefore, the Upanishads are not always consistent in this matter. So this consistency has a name in Sanskrit, in Mimamsa. It's called Viganam. Viganam means the inconsistency regarding the description of the creation among various texts. And commentators say that Viganam is the proof that Srishti is not the Tatparyam, is not the essential teaching of the Upanishads. Why? Because between Jivatma and Paramatma, the Karana Karya Sambandha, the creator created connection does not exist at all. Why? Because they are the same. Right. Now, in fact, there is a story which Anandagiri, the story in the Upanishads, which Anandagiri talks about in his commentary on this particular, Karika. I don't know if you've heard this story. It's an interesting story. It seems that once upon a time, the various organs of the body and prana as well as the various organs of the body, they had a disagreement. Who is the main among us? Who is the main contributor to the jiva? So each organ said that I am the contributor. Prana also said I am the contributor. But they couldn't arrive at a decision. So they have to have an arbitrator. So they went to Lord Brahmaji and said, we all have this problem that we think, each one of us thinks that we are the greatest. So what is, you tell us, who is the greatest? Okay. Now, what did Brahmaji say? Brahmaji said, you have an experiment that each one of you go away from the body for 1 year, the body, the jiva for 1 year, and turn by turn, not together. Okay. And then see what is the consequence. Right. Okay. What happened? When the experiment started, the sense organ, the ear, Shrotra Indriya, he started and said, okay, I will go away. Right. So for 1 year, the sense organ left the body. The hearing sense organ left the body. When he came back after 1 year, what did he find? There was no difference. The jiva was still there, and probably he was happier because he didn't hear a lot of things which he otherwise would have heard in that 1 year. Right? Okay. Then the eye went, the chakshu indriya went. And for 1 year, the blind jiva was there. What happened when they came back? Nothing happened. Right? The jiva was very much there. Like that, one by one, each sense organ went and came back. At the end, they found that even when the mind went and came back, the mind is supposed to be a very powerful sense organ. The mind went and came back, it found that jiva was still very much there, not at all disturbed, right? Because the mind is the disturbing factor. When the mind went away, there was no disturbance at all. Then finally, prana said, okay, now it's time for me to go, right? Now, prana didn't actually have to go. Prana started packing his bags. What happened? What would happen? Or what should happen when prana starts to pack the
Faculties will
bags?
start failing.
All the faculties started failing. All the sense organs who had gone, they started, even before prana left, the body was weakening. And therefore, they all realized that without prana, the jiva will die. So finally, they accepted prana as the chief, the most important of the indriyas. Okay. Now, what does Anandagiri give this particular example for in this context? He says that we all know that prana has cannot talk, nor can the sense organs talk. Therefore, what is the purpose of this story? It is not to show that sense organs can leave and the body comes back. It is to show that among all the organs that you have, among all the faculties that you have, prana is the most important faculty. Once this idea is understood, then this story can be thrown away, disposed of, right? It's like you go to, in these trains and they give you that chai and cooler. You know what the cooler chai is? The small little wooden cup, mud cup in which you get chai. Why do they give it to you that? Because when the train leaves, you still have the cup with you. When you finish that chai, what do? You throw away the cup. The idea is the same. Take the content, throw away the container. So in any scriptural teaching, this is extremely important. Because you have people coming up and saying, oh, in Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna was talking about the Bhagavad Gita itself, was giving the Bhagavad Gita lecture, and or any of us who does Parayanam knows that it takes 3 hours at least, right? So for those 3 hours, what were the two armies doing? Did they go home? Did they take rest? Did they have chai? Did they have biscuits? So when all these questions are asked, remember that this is not the purpose of the Gita. The purpose of the Gita is not to prove that Krishna existed, not to prove that Arjuna existed. The purpose of Gita is what? It's a moksha shastram. It is the essence of the Gita you have to extract and throw away the rest. This is the way that this teaching has to be presented and assimilated. And therefore he says, Nasti Bheda Kathanchana. There is no duality of any manner whatsoever. No differences caused by creation can ever be accepted as Satyam. Why? Because differences itself is Mithya. The creation itself is Mithya. Differences naturally have to be Mithya. Right? And we all know there are 3 types of differences. This also I'll mention because one should know what the differences are. When you talk about Bhedaha, differences between 2 objects, you have 3 types of differences. Sajatiya difference, Vijatiya difference, Swagata difference. Can anyone care to explain what, by giving an example, each of these differences, what exactly are they? What, for example, is Sajatiya difference? The name itself is very self-explicit. Sajatiya. Sajatiya Bheda means what?
Within the same, like
Between the same jati, between the same species.
same
So
jati.
differences between 2 members belonging to one species. For example, differences in human beings. What is the example? Man and woman, both are human beings. Sajatiya difference. Now, Vijatiya differences in members of two different species. For example, one is a man belonging to the human race, and one is a tiger belonging to the feline race. Vijatiya difference. And when is Swagata difference, internal differences in one member of the same species, like my hands and legs are differences, my eyes and nose are differences. These are all Swagata. So three types of differences are there: Sajatiya, Vijatiya, Swagataha. None of these differences are real. All these differences are superimpositions, what we call adhyaropaha, superimpositions, right? And the teaching method is this. First, you introduce the difference. Then you negate the difference, right? Supposing I am teaching you, let us say, about a pot, right? I'm not a potter, right? I am a Vedantic teacher, but you want to learn about a substance called pot, right? What do I do? First, I say, okay, I say this pot, this is a pot. Now, this pot is a karyam, a product, right? This is the first. As I introduce the pot to you, I say this pot is a product of something. The moment I say product, what is the next question? The moment I say this pot is karyam, what should be the natural next question?
What is the material?
What is the
What is the
cause?
karana? What is the karanam, the cause? And therefore, my first statement is this pot is a product. And then I'll say, okay, fine. The karanam, the cause of this pot is clay. So two statements have been made, right? Two substances have been introduced, pot and clay. Then in the third stage, we do an analysis of the pot and the clay. What is the analysis? See, remember, we have done all this hundreds of times, but now I'm presenting the whole thing very briefly so that we can recall what we are actually doing sitting here day after day. First, we say, among these two substances, pot and clay, let us analyze. Is there a separate pot and a separate clay? Are they two different substances? Or are they only one substance? So, when we analyze the pot, we discover actually it is only clay. There is no substance called pot, which is distinct from the clay, right? And therefore, actually, there is only a substance called clay, to which, when that clay gets some sort of a form, you give it a name, and therefore it becomes pot. That pot has name, form, and utility. But irrespective of the fact the pot has name, form, and utility, it cannot be said to be a different substance from the clay. That is the third step. And therefore, third step, effectively you are saying that there is no thing called the pot. When you say that there is no substance called the pot, you are saying there is no karyam, there is no product called the pot. When I say pot is not a product, what happens to the idea of the cause of that pot? A very important question.
No product, so no cause.
No product, no cause, no karyam, no karanam. The clay enjoys the label karanam, cause, only as long as you accept that the pot is a karyam, a product. But once the pot is negated, the karyam is negated, clay cannot said to be Karanam also. So at the fourth stage, we negate the Karanam status of the clay. What is left behind? Clay, which is neither the product nor the Karanam. So Karya, Karana, Vilakshana, clay alone remain. Thus, your vision of the pot has been replaced by a vision of clay. And that clay, you cannot label it either cause or product. And therefore, there are no two things. Since there is no pot separate from the clay, there are no two things. There is, if you want to establish a Karya Karana Sambandha, cause effect relationship, you have to have two things. And since clay and pot are not there, pot is not there, only clay is there, where is the question of establishing a cause effect relationship? Where is the question of establishing Karya Karana Sambandha? Right? So the first two stages we talked about, where you introduced the pot and the clay, that is the stage of superimposition, which in Vedanta we call Adhyaropa. The later two stages, where we inquire and negate the very status of the pot, they are called Apavada, negation. So this is the way in which the Adhyaropa Apavada technique is applied. Adhyaropa Apavada Prakriya. Now you apply the whole thing to the Jagat, the world. In Vedanta, what is a pot? The pot is the world. Right? What is the Karanam? The Karanam is Ishvara, Brahman. So the same stages. In the first, we introduce the Jagat, the world, as a product, as a Karyam. Second, we say if the world is a product, there should be a Karanam. That Karanam is Ishvara or Brahman. In the third stage, you analyze the world and then you realize that there is no world other than Brahman. Right? So you realize that there is no Karyam called Jagat. And if there is no Karyam called Jagat, you come to the fourth stage where you say there is no Karanam called Ishvara also. There is only Brahman, which doesn't have the status of a Karanam or a Karyam. And therefore, Karya, Karana, Vilakshana, Brahman only exists. That only is extremely important. Only Brahman exists, which means there is no creation at all. And it is in order to enable us to understand this Karya Karana Vilakshana Brahman, this Brahman which is different from creator and created product. It is for the purpose of making us understand this that the Upanishads introduce the creation theory. It is Adhyaropa only. It is a superimposition only, and it should not be taken as Satyam. Okay, let me also examine, what you call, explain this through a small example, right? A man had in Kerala, let us say, Kerala people keep elephants, right? So a man in Kerala had 17 elephants. Okay. How many elephants? 17. And he had 3 sons. Now in his will, he wrote that when I die, these elephants, 17 elephants, should be divided among my children. 3 children. And a particular proportion. The first child should get half the number of elephants. Keep the numbers in your mind, okay? The first child should get half the number of elephants. The second child should get 1/3 the number of elephants. And the last child should get 1/9 of the number of elephants. And of course, there was a clause saying elephants should not be harmed at all. In due course, of course, Shadvikara, this person died, right? Then the three children sat together and were wondering how to give effect to this will. Okay, now don't tell me about lowest common multiple, LCM and all that. Okay, you don't do all those things. Without using mathematics, how would you solve this problem? If you use mathematics, simple mathematics, yes, it can be solved. But without using mathematics, how would you solve this problem? Anybody? 1/3, 1/2, and 1/9. Okay. So what happened? They went to this wise man in the village and said, this is the will. These are 17 elephants, and these are 3 of us. Help us to solve this problem. Wise man said, okay. He went into his backyard and he came back with 1 more elephant. Now, how many total elephants are there?
18.
18 elephants. The first child got half. How many? 9.
9.
The second child got 1/3. How many? 6.
6.
And the fourth child got 1/9. How many? 2.
2.
So 6 plus
9
9
plus 2.
plus 6 plus 2 is how much?
70.
70. The wise man took his elephant and went back.
Hmm.
What is this called? The wise man didn't lose the elephant, and yet the problem got sorted out. Right? So this external introduction of something to make you understand, that is adhyasa. And adhyasa, adhyaropa, and later on taking away his own elephant and going back. That is apavada. Similarly, Shastra introduces creation. Once creation is introduced, talks about Advaitam. Once Advaitam is understood, Shastra removes the creation. There was Brahman, there is Brahman, and there will only be Brahman. If there is something in between, that is only your Adhyaropa, the Adhyasa, the 18th elephant. And therefore, Gaudapada says, Nasti Bheda Kathanchana. There never is any duality in any way. All duality is mithya only. Okay, any questions? I hope you like the story, right?
Yeah, it's like the 10th man story, this is like 18th elephant story.
Actually, pretty simple. If you use LCM, you straight away arrive
Yeah.
at what? 9 plus 6 plus 2. But I said they did no maths.
Mm.
If they knew maths, then 18th elephant could not have come in, right? Okay. Now we look at Karika number 16. We will chant. Ashrama Trivedahina.
Ashramasthi
Madhyamotkrishta
Madhyamokrishtadrishtayah
Upasanopadistheyam
Pasanopadišteyam
Tadartham Manukampaya.
Tadartham Manukampaya.
So this is the answer to a possible question by some Purva Bakshi who will say that, supposing there is no Dvaitam at all, which you say, you are saying that Dvaitam is superimposition, there is no Dvaitam at all. Then how do you explain Karmakanda? Karmakanda requires Dvaitam. Puja requires Detam. Karma requires Dvaitam. Upasana requires Dvaitam. If there is no Dvaitam at all, why should the Vedas talk about Jivatma meditating on Paramatma? If there is no creation, why should Karma Kanda talk about Upasi Devata and Upasaka? So this is the answer to that. So Gaudapada says, Ashrama Trividha. There are 3 types of ashramas. Now ashrama here can be taken as the type of the seeker. So 3 types of seekers are there. What are they? Hina, Madhyamaha, Utkrashtaya, Drishtaya. Right? That word, Hina, Madhyama, Utkrishtaya, Drishtaya. That is the word we have to take now. Drishtaya. Drishtaya means Darshana Samarthyam, the capacity to understand. Darshana Samarthyam. This is the word that Shankaracharya uses to define Drishti, the capacity to understand. He says that because Drishti can be taken as perception also, as seeing. He doesn't want us to take that meaning. So he says Drishtaya should be taken as Darshana Samarthyam, the capacity to understand something. Right? And this capacity is what they are divided into 3. Hina. So Hina, you have to add over here. Hina Drishti. That is to say, Hina is Nikrishtaha, inferior. Hina Drishti is inferior capacity. So the first person has inferior capacity to understand. The second person has Madhyama Drishti, a medium capacity to understand. The third person has Utkrishta Drishti, superior capacity to understand. And he says, Yam Upasana Upadishta Tadarthaha. This Upasana is meant for these seekers. Which seekers? Manda, Madhyama, Drishtaya. The one who are Manda Adhikaris, inferior sadhakas, and the one who are Madhyama Adhikaris, sadhakas who are advanced, but have not come to the stage of Utkrishta, of advanced sadhakas. And Shankara says, not only the upasanas, even the karmas prescribed in the karma kanda. So the karma kanda, karmas as well as upasanas, they are meant for madhyama manda adhikaris. Commentators say that karma yoga is meant for manda adhikari, the lowest of the adhikaris. Karma yoga is meant for them. Once they have done karma yoga and got some degree of chitta shuddhi, they become madhyama adhikaris, middling adhikaris, and then upasana yoga is meant for them. And Shankara adds in the commentary that upasana and karma are not meant for the uttama adhikari. Who is the uttama adhikari, the most superior sadhaka? He is the one who has the firm knowledge that Atma is one and Advaitam only. So the word Uttamadhikari here indicates a jnani. For this person, when you say jnani, what does it mean? A person who has come to jnana kanda. For that person, karma is no longer relevant. He may require nididhyasanam, but he does not require karma yoga or upasana yoga or shravanam. If he has some doubts, he may still require mananam. If he has doubt-free knowledge, he may require nididhyasanam. If he has taken care of all his habitual thinking patterns also, then he doesn't require anything. And therefore he says, Anukampaya. Tadartham Anukampaya. For those people, Anukampaya means out of compassion. So Anukampaya, Shastram prescribes karma and upasana out of compassion for the Manda, Madhyama, Adhikaris. And Shankara, not Shankaracharya, and Pujya Swami Dayananji. We are actually following the teaching pattern which he laid down, where we take Mandukya as the last Upanishad for our teaching. In the course of 6 Upanishads which you have taught, Mandukya is the last. And Dayanand Swami had said that we take Mandukya as the last teaching Upanishad because the Mandukya teaching, which dismisses Ishvara, dismisses Jiva, dismisses Karma, dismisses Upasana, it can be very, very disturbing to the person. If only Advaitam is there, unless your mind is extremely strong, it is very difficult to accept that there is no Ishvara. Because all of us initially have, have the world as a support, and then we have Ishvara as support. So when we have given up the world as support, we have moved to Ishvara as support. Now, when you give up Ishvara as a support also, Gaudapada is saying that Ishvara himself is not there. Where is the question of looking for support from Ishvara? Therefore, you are leaning on whom for support? In the Mandukya Upanishad, when you have come here, who are you leaning on for support?
There is no one else.
Self.
On.
Lean only on yourself. You are self-sufficient. From world dependence to Ishvara dependence to independence. That is a spiritual journey. And Veda knows that more than 95 to 98% of the students are not ready for Advaitic teaching. And therefore, the Jivatma Paramatma Bheda, the Upasya Devata, Upasaka Bheda, that is a compromise. Right? Until the time when your mind is mature enough to be able to absorb the shock of the teaching, that there really is nobody for you to be supported. You cannot ask for support from anybody. How do I know whether my mind is mature or not? A very simple thumb rule. If Advaitam appeals to you, it is an indication of maturity. If you find Advaitam most uninteresting, you are requiring Dvaitam. You will require to be in the karma upasana mode for some more time. And even in upasana, there are grades, there are levels, right? Some people love Ishvara as a particular person. So I know people who talk to Krishna, right? He wants a personal deity. There are some people who find Vishwarupa Ishvara does not appeal to them at all. They want only their personal deity. These people are also at the level of Ishvara as a limited entity, right? So these people talk to Ishvara. And if you go and tell such a student that Ishvara is mithya, you will probably not see them in your next class. Once the mind is matured, then he begins to understand that if Shiva is, Ishvara, maybe Krishna is also Ishvara. So he begins to see all the forms of Ishvara. So Ekarupa Ishvara to Anekarupa Ishvara, transition has taken place. But is he in Dvaitam or Advaitam? He is very much in Dvaitam. He has just replaced Ekarupa Ishvara external to him by Anekarupa Ishvara external to him. Once he has matured, pickled, let us say, in this Anekarupa Ishvara for quite some time, then he goes to Arupa Upasana. Remember, we are talking about Upasana, right? We are not talking about knowledge right now. The Upasakas. So first Upasaka is Ekarupa Ishvara Upasaka. Next Upasaka is Aneka Rupa Ishvara Upasaka, Virat Ishvara Upasaka. The third stage, he goes to Arupa Upasana. He meditates upon Ishvara, he worships Ishvara as a formless, divisionless principle. Very often, Akasha, space, is used as an example. Then the fourth stage comes. Again, Upasana. We are not going to Jnanam at all. Again, Upasana. Ahangara Upasana. They say you invoke the Ishvara upon yourself. Right? This I am Brahman Upasana it is. That formless Brahman is invoked upon me. This is called Abheda Upasana. The first three, Ekarupa, Anekarupa, and Arupa, they were called, they are Bheda Upasana because those three are different from you. In the fourth stage, the Upasana is Abheda Upasana, where you are invoking that Ishvara upon yourself. This is not Jnana. It is an imagination that I am Ishvara. Aham Brahmasmi is an imagination. So the thinking in your mind is not Aham Brahmasmi. The thinking in your mind is Aham Brahma Eva Asmi. I am like Brahma. Right? You have removed the difference because the Brahman has been invoked upon yourself. But you are saying, I am imagining that I am Brahman. I have not yet accepted. 99% of all people are within these four classifications. And in the vision of Gaudapada, all these four, remember, many of these are exalted beings. Upasakas are very exalted beings. But in the vision of Vedanta, in the vision of Gaudapada, all these people are samsaris only. Okay. We will stop here because from the next Karika onwards, this topic is ended here. And next Karika onwards, Gaudapada picks up the views of non-Advaitins and discusses them. So that we'll do in the next class because I want the continuity to be maintained. For today, we'll stop. In case any questions are there, I'm open. No questions? You should be having. I had plenty. Okay. In that case, we will stop. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your
Shiva.
patience.
Thank you. Thank you.